Over the years, following one's bliss became quite controversial. Using the life as a dance metaphor, as proposed by Bateson, some argued that there was no greater pleasure than dancing the divine dance that you were meant or you were supposed to dance. But the problem kept surfacing that there was no empirical evidence on what your divine dance was supposed to look like. It's all, when you come down to it, really rather subjective. And, honestly, in being so subjective, don't we tend to lean more towards our own pleasure, what is really good for us? Now, an old variation on the theme was presented by Howard Thurman, the famous theologian at Boston University and mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thurman said, "Don't ask so much what the world needs. Go out and do what makes you come alive, because what the world needs most are people who have come alive." I wonder how Dr. Martin Luther King interpreted that. Wow, don't ask what the world needs. I should come out and feel more alive. How would he interpret that? How do you interpret that? I mean, I would never counsel not to pursue that which makes you feel really alive. But by the same token, does that not conceivably give license to self-indulgence? What do you mean you're going to Tahiti? Well, I got to feel alive, I just got to dance my divine dance. I got to do what I want to do. A more contemporary phrasing of the concept came up in Steve Jobs' commencement address in 2005 at Stanford. He urged his listeners to follow their passions. This also has a double meaning of sorts. It could imply, as Jobs insists it does, to follow one's own passion rather than the dogma of other people's views. And this is much in line with Emerson's essay on self-reliance, that we ought to follow our own opinions rather than conform to others. That's all fine. But when you use terms like follow your passion, follow your bliss, do what you love, do what makes you come alive, the intent of the message is far from clear. Megan McArdle, who writes for The Atlantic, took Steve Jobs to task. She asked, what would happen if everyone in society took his advice? What if everyone followed their passion and then take that to its logical conclusion? Who would do all the mundane jobs in our society? And she is far from the first to raise the question. Immanuel Kant, in his treatise on ethics called The Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals, he raises the following scenario. Suppose you find a person with a special talent or gift which is of help to society as a whole. But circumstances are such that this person would prefer not to continue offering his or her strength to society, and instead wishes to opt out for the sake of indulging in his or her own pleasure. Should that person be allowed to do so, deferring the capacity to improve the lives of others for the sake of his or her own gratification? Now, this is not a rhetorical question. I mean, Kant went to bat on this. He sternly argued on the immorality of foregoing one's responsibility to others for the sake of one's own pleasure. To Immanuel Kant, it would be almost irrational, his word, irrational to live by the dictum, do what you love. Kant is searching for an ethic that proves responsible in an other-oriented way. Other-oriented. You know, if I can generalize just for a moment, it feels like we've left this idea of being other-oriented a long time ago. In the 1960s, they were still filled with this idealism of serving others and acting as a responsible citizen in society. But then the next decade, the 70s, of course, turned into the me generation, which still, has momentum today, as I believe is demonstrated by the selfie. Everybody now takes the selfie. It's all about me. Look at me in this situation. Look at me in that situation. It's about my pleasure, my bliss, my passion. I'm doing what I love. I would never counsel against that, but I would say, it's complicated. I can't help but remember, and I'm sure many of you will recall this. It's a YouTube that went viral about a guy nicknamed Slow-Mo. His real name is Dr. John Kitchen, a practicing neurologist. He left his profession to do what he always wanted to do, namely skate up and down the promenade at Pacific Beach, being in a zone, blasting inspirational music from speakers hidden under his shorts. And so he acquired the nickname Slow-Mo. As people go, oh, there he goes. Wow, just skating along the promenade. I wonder how Kant would have managed that situation, since Slow-Mo claims all the good that has come as a result. For he is now able to transcend all the lousy stuff associated with the materialistic world, and he feels no need to remain snared in this narrative of picking a career and having to stick it out to the end. Well, good for Dr. Kitchen, good for Slow-Mo, I guess. If his passion dictates daily skating along the beach all day long, then who am I to say that he has chosen a wrong path? How can anyone be critical of another person's bliss or passion? Now, if Dr. Kitchen's bliss was to go to Sierra Leone in order to fight Ebola, even then, I can't legitimately say that that has any more validity than skating without sounding like a very judgmental Immanuel Kant. Follow your bliss means, well, follow your bliss. And who can deny another person his or her pleasure? But it's complicated. If you're an African American living in Ferguson, Missouri, or in Bedford-Stuyvesant, or in East Palo Alto, living one's passion, it's just an absurd proposition. It's impossible. Following your bliss is a fitting admonition to the graduates at Stanford, and a comfortable prospect on a neurologist's retirement income or a celebrity mythologist. And you'd be more inclined to hear those words of self-fulfillment from an upper middle-class Unitarian pulpit than you would from a lower middle-class, rural, perhaps Baptist church. Do what you love remains an option only for the privileged in our society. It's another sign of a widening gap between the haves and have-nots. Because it's not just income disparity, but a painful discrepancy in terms of who gets to pursue their dreams, or who actually gets the chance to dream. Who gets to do that which makes them come alive? perhaps we ought to reflect more deeply on choosing to live with a greater responsibility to others and not live so selectively for the sake of just our own pleasures. But we just have one life, and we don't know the length of our years. What do I owe to myself? What do I owe to others? Damn you, Gauguin. Damn you.